Hey, good evening, everyone. Welcome. Just give me a little shout to let me know that you're reading me loud and clear. So over the last 10 years, and because of my passion for sort of smaller South African communities, I've had the privilege of traveling to 155 different projects around South Africa. Since 2012, and with the Expedition Project, I've also visited game reserves, both private and national, from the Kalahari to the Karoo, from Manyoni to Mapungubwe. And I've seen these through my eyes as a South African, and also through the eyes of the international volunteers that have joined these trips. I first visited Amakhala Game Reserve and their connected Amakhala Foundation in 2012. And what struck me immediately was that they worked just as hard on their community projects as they did on the conservation projects. And it really made me realize that no conservation work is possible without the community. There's no conservation without community buy-in, and there's no conservation without education. Tammy from the Amakhala Foundation spoke previously about their environmental education projects that they're doing in the foundation. And as part of this series of live streams with Amakhala, tonight we bring you part 4, which is the Amakhala Foundation's community projects, and more specifically, their literacy project. So with that, I'm going to bring in Cathy from the Amakhala Foundation. Hi there, Cathy.
Hi, everyone. Hi there.
How are you doing today?
I'm very well. Thank you, Roger.
How's life in the Eastern Cape?
Yeah, it's pretty good. I mean, given, the current circumstances with COVID and no tourists, but other than that, we've had beautiful autumn weather. So all in all, in that sense, pretty good.
Nice. So a reminder to those of you who are watching this live, you can post your questions in the comments and we'll aim to answer them. But only if you're in the Facebook group. So please, if you're not a member yet, join the Facebook group so we can actually post your questions and answer them live. If you're watching this on replay, you can still post your questions in the comments, and we'll get back to you as soon as we can. So to start off with, Cathy, what sort of brought you to Amakhala, and what's your background?
Okay. Well, I'm part of the family that is a co-owner on Amakhala Game Reserve, the Gush family. And my own background has always been in NGO work. I've worked for education NGOs for probably more years than I care. So over 30 years. First in Cape Town when we were based there when we were first married, and then we moved to the Eastern Cape to our farm here in about 1998. And I've always been involved in education projects. I've been doing a lot of work in the nearby town called Grahamstown, where there's also a university and where I work for an NGO. But I gradually got drawn into the work of the Amakhala Foundation because I'm passionate about children's literacy. And I was looking around and saying, well, there are a lot of children in this area. There's a school, they're young children. And I just felt led to also be investing in their literacy development and their educational progress. So for the last 2 years or so, I've been doing work for the Amakhala Foundation, specifically on educational and literacy projects.
Okay, amazing. So would you like to tell me a little bit more about these sort of literacy projects and what that entails?
Yeah, and we've got a couple of things going. The main thing is what I call a literacy library and literacy hour every Monday morning. Of course, not at the moment with COVID and lockdown and no school happening, but I'll tell you a little bit more about that in a moment. So every Monday morning, I spend about 2 hours at the little local school where there are about 45 pupils. And we've got a tiny little library there, and I will take a group of them at a time, one grade at a time, into the library. And in fact, I take half the grade, half the children from a particular class, and we'll do story time. I'll read them 2 or 3 stories, depending on how much they demand and how much time we've got. And then they will get an opportunity themselves to choose a book that they can then take home with them and borrow for the week, as it were, and then bring back the next week and exchange, or in a fortnight's time, whatever the time period might be. And we've had special book bags made for them that they can store their books in, so that they can take them home safely and bring them back safely again, and they get protected. So they get an opportunity, the children, to choose something that they would like to read just for enjoyment, for the fun of it. It's got nothing to do with it practicing their reading, or they don't have to report back on it, or it's not considered schoolwork. it's really to just kind of show them that reading can take you places, can be exciting, can be fun. And usually they'd have to get a sibling or a parent at home to read it to them. So that's our kind of library hour. But while that's going on, the other half of the class is having a one-on-one session with Amakhala volunteers, who I think Pietro would have spoken about the Amakhala volunteer program as well. And they come in, so they take the other half of the class while I take the one half, and they do some one-on-one activities with the children, which is really very valuable because they play literacy games with them that work on letter sound knowledge, on building vocabulary, and they're fun games, and they make the whole sort of literacy thing fun. There's a set of animal cards, for instance, with which they can play Snap and things like that, but they're also building vocabulary, in the meantime. So that's our kind of library and literacy hour. And we also have special events that we mark or commemorate, like World Read Aloud Day, which in South Africa is driven by an organization called Nalibali. They bring out a special story for the occasion that you can download. And we will then get game rangers and the volunteers and anyone in the community will come along on the day, and they will one-on-one read the story to a child and draw a picture together about it. And it all goes into a kind of massive big campaign where Nalibali then say at the end of the day, their numbers have been increasing every year. I think this year they had something like 2 million at the same time on World Read Aloud Day. So we'll do special events like that. But the whole year actually culminates in the reading camp at the end of the year, where the grade 2s and 3s come, and they spend 2 days on the reserve camping out, obviously in a safe space, and they do a kind of combination of environmental and literacy activities. And then we've got a guy that leads it for us, a guy called Basil Mills. You'll possibly see him in one of the photos a little later, who is a legend in the area, and he does all kinds of wild and wonderful things with them: story time, reading time, finding objects in the area that they then talk about and write about. We usually have a visiting author as well that comes in. So it's a kind of a day and a half jam-packed with literacy and learning activities, all of it fun. And one of the main things we're trying to do is build a culture of reading, and also just to associate reading with fun and enjoyment, to kind of go beyond the classroom experience where they get very caught up in the kind of technical process of learning to decoding and encoding, and the sort of whole phonemic process, and very little whole language experience happens. So we're trying to give them that whole language experience of stories and books, as where it all comes together and where the really fun part is. We're trying to give them those experiences, and especially also because a lot of the children don't come from backgrounds, homes where people are able to have a lot of reading material in the home, or there isn't necessarily a strong tradition of having books there that can be read together as a family. So we're also really trying to promote that.
Amazing. So, the reading camp sounds incredible. Is this a photo of
it
them?
Is. That's Basil Mills, one of a kind. And here he is. He takes them on a walk, and they have to pick up different objects, taste them, feel them, talk about them, and kind of gather them together, so that they can weave a story around that, when they get back to base, as it were. And it's really important to be giving children these kind of stimuli for writing, because writing is something that they often struggle with. It's kind of the last step, in the literacy process. And if you can kind of stimulate their imagination and their thinking and give them objects that they can think about and talk about and then write about, it helps a lot.
So Tanya says the reading camps sound amazing, and she's wondering if this is actually all done in English, or there are other languages as well.
So most of it is done in English, but Basil does speak a little bit of isiXhosa, and we usually have an isiXhosa helper or two as well to translate where necessary. The children are schooling in English because the little local primary school is an English medium school, but their home language is isiXhosa. And we absolutely encourage them to read, talk, ask questions, etc., as much as they want to, in their home language, because we value that. We by no means want to negate their home language, but they are also reasonably comfortable in English because they're learning in English.
Okay, amazing. Let's have a look at some other photos. So is this them leaving to actually go on this camp?
They get fetched in this vehicle, yes, and then they also go on a game drive on the reserve during the camp. Once again, to kind of gather info and things that they can write about, but also to give them the exposure, to the reserve and to animals. And they usually we have a theme animal for the camp. So the first year, I think it was the giraffe, and this year it was the zebra. And then they will kind of focus on that animal as well and see if they can see them in their natural environment.
What are some of the feelings that are sort of coming through as some of these children are presumably seeing a lot of these animals and going on a game drive for the first time?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's very, very special for them because they know that they live in an area, where there are game reserves and these animals are about, but they wouldn't actually necessarily get to see them. So it really connects them with the animals, seeing them in their natural environment. I think that feeling of connectedness, of connecting with the animals in their environment is very special for them because, as I say, they know that they're kind of surrounded by the reserves, but they wouldn't necessarily see them on a day-to-day basis.
Okay, so how about this? Is this right at the end of the camp?
No, they actually, well, that was taken at the end, but what they do is in the course of the camp, they paint their own big banner, and it's called the ABC camp. So it's the Amakhala Books and Conservation camp, and Basil helps them to make this big poster. He is, amongst other things, also a brilliant artist and cartoonist. So he'll draw the outlines, and they will then all be involved in painting it. I think maybe there's a picture somewhere as well of them getting involved in painting it, and that's what they then come up with. That's their banner for the camp. And on the right, you'll see Mlumzi, who is our one of our isiXhosa assistants, dressed in quite traditional garb. Yeah, he's one of our helpers as well.
So Tanya also wants to know if people are donating books for the library.
We haven't gone on a big book donating drive for the library as such, because actually we're fortunate enough to have a little, it's like a regional depot almost. So all the books in the library are mostly from the regional library services, which is a provincial stroke government service. So we're actually fine for the library, but we have had some funds donated in the past to be able to give the children books to take home. So you can see here they're holding up a book, and it's a wonderful book called Mr. Hare Meets Mr. Mandela, and it features Nelson Mandela and a hare, and it's the most wonderful story. And it's not particularly cheap, so we did get some funding for this particular camp to be able to give the children each their own copy of this book.
Oh, amazing. Okay, let me go through some more of these fantastic photos. And let's have a look. Okay, so is this them then designing their paintings?
Yes. So, well, this is where he's done the outlines for them, and they're filling it in with paint. So it's a kind of group activity, and then obviously they're talking all the time because conversations are so important as well for building vocabulary.
And the sort of ages of the children, what's the age range?
They're sort of 8-9 years old. Yeah,
okay.
So they're kind of what we would call grade 2 and 3, the ones that come on the camp. So it's their sort of second and third year of formal schooling.
Okay, let's have a look. And then story time.
Yeah, that was a visiting author that we had. She came and she read her own book to them. So obviously that's really special too, because they see a book and they're getting to meet the person who actually wrote the book, is there in person to read it for them, and then she signs it. She signed each one of they each got a copy, and she signed it for them as well.
Amazing. Okay, let's have a look. What else?
So here, this is one of the volunteers who's here. He is working. Sometimes they have one child, sometimes they have two, and you can see the cards all set out there, and they're playing a game, with the animal cards and talking about it. So he's having some one-on-ones or one-on-two time here inside the classroom, while I've got the other group in the library. And this is really, really valuable because they don't get any other opportunity to do this. I mean, it's basically just them and their teacher every day, all day. So this is kind of a departure for them, and it's a fun thing. So once again, they're learning in a fun way, and they're getting to interact with a different person, who's working with them around literacy in different ways. So that's also the real value of this.
So are these volunteers from Amakhala Volunteers? Are these the other people that are there?
Mostly they are overseas young people that come from overseas for 2 or 3 or a couple of weeks at a time. So the turnover, it's not the same ones for the whole year. Mostly they'll be there for 2 or 3, maybe 4 weeks max, and work with the children. Then a new group will come, but they are Amakhala volunteers, yes.
So it looks like the ratios are just like drastically increased all of a sudden, something like this. And from what I know about community projects that I've worked in the past, the numbers can be, really high when a teacher's trying to handle a class of 30 plus students. Then all of a sudden the injection of these sort of volunteers into the situation, it just brings those ratio numbers, straight right back down, and obviously has a huge impact, doesn't it?
Absolutely. No, there's no substitute for that. I run a project in Grahamstown as well, where a very similar thing happens. And the volunteers will say, oh, we don't know if we're equipped to, if we're doing enough, we're doing the right thing. And I always say to them, if nothing else, that individual attention, that individual half an hour, whatever, you're spending with that child is so incredibly valuable. It might be the only half an hour, of undivided adult attention around literacy that they're going ever, to have. So it really does make a big difference.
Amazing. And any particular kind of skills that these sort of volunteers would ideally have in order to handle an environment like this?
No, I don't think. I think just a genuine sort of interest and a gentleness, around the children. And I haven't yet had any problems. I mean, I think the volunteers love it, and the children love it. So, and they all literate. It's quite interesting because some of them are, English is their second language, the volunteers, for some of them. So we always go through the game beforehand and just make sure that they know what all the little objects are called, and in English, just to make sure that they are well enough equipped to play the game with the children.
So Hein from Mkondo says, awesome work. Looks fantastic.
Thank you.
And Tanya sending us another question. She's loving this, Cathy. She sent us just another question. Says, I imagine the school classrooms are quite overcrowded, so this one-on-one time must be great.
Yes, it absolutely is. It's very, very special. Yeah, I mean the children, obviously they would love them, to stay longer. But we can't take up the teachers' whole morning. But it is very special for them.
Okay, let's have a look what else we got. Anything you want to talk through on this photo?
So here is one of the children on reading camp, just having some solo reading time. So we really try and have a range of activities where they do group activities, they do some writing, they have interaction with Basil, where he's an absolute master storyteller, where he tells them stories around the campfire and as they're walking about. But we also then make sure that they have alone reading time as well.
Let's have a look what else we got. Seen one similar to that. How about this one?
Yeah, there she is with her books that she's been given and some stationery. Yeah, I can really recommend that book for anyone who's got children. It's absolutely delightful. It's written by a South African author, a guy called Chris van Wyk, who sadly has passed away. But it's it's a delightful story, and it actually brings in numeracy as well, because it's about the hare who finds this 200 Rand note somewhere, and it's got Mr. Mandela's face on it, obviously. So, because he was president at the time, but so he decides he has to take it back. He better get it back to Mr. Mandela, because clearly it's his face is on it. And he has to set off and go to the city, and he, has to spend some money taking a taxi, and then it gets less and less and less. And by the time he actually meets Mr. Mandela, it's only 10 Rand. So it's kind of numeracy as well, and then they're meeting, and then he gets it once he's got back home, and he gets a letter, an envelope, and he opens it, and there's a 200 Rand note in it with a little letter from Mr. Mandela. So yeah, it's very precious. So if anyone can get their hands on it, that's a special one.
And I mean, because you've been doing this for a while now, have you started to notice the sort of the impacts of this, and you can start to really see year on year how stuff like this is really having the positive impact on this school and those students and in the community?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. It takes time to build this kind of thing up. You can't do a once-off thing and think the kids, that's it. The kids have got it. If you really have to, you're putting those building blocks, in place all the time, and that's why, we have week after week. We're there, and we're doing this, so it builds all the time. So, and these children, by the time they get to the end of grade 3, have had at least 3 years of exposure to weekly literacy activities and support, and books being donated, books being taken out from the library and taken home. And yeah, we definitely are starting to see that. I mean, the children, if I, for some reason, have to miss a week or whatever, they're very upset. If it was the grade 2's turn, and I pitch up and I want to do the grade 1's the next week, because I'm just carrying on with the sequence, they're like, no, you have to do us as well. We can't, we can't miss out. So they really are getting, I think, really passionate as well, about books and reading, and so that exposure does begin to tell over time.
And the combination of some reading and some conservation, I guess that's the ultimate kind of thing, isn't it? You're trying to encourage that crossover, get them more educated about conservation and what's going on in the surrounding areas.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, we could have the reading camp, just at school, outside in the grounds or somewhere else. But the value of it is that it's on the reserve, and you're incorporating the conservation issues, the animals, all of that as well, and that. A lot of the real value lies. And obviously, in the reading sessions, that the story reading sessions that I have, I try and also, read relevant books and put out books about animals. I mean, there's some of them who just can't start books about animals and not, bothered about taking out storybooks. They just want to take the books, about animals. So I think, with anything, you're going to have a varied impact, but definitely, it's having a quite a deep impact on some of them. And what I forgot to mention is that there's also a little grade R class, which is like the preschool year. And I don't do story time directly with them, but I do a little selection of storybooks for their teacher once a week when I'm there on a Monday as well, and she'll read those books with them.
I wanted to ask about the book bags that you give out to them. Presumably, do you do this at the start of each sort of academic year? They'll get a book bag full of some stuff. Now, do you see them coming back with their book bags, or do these sort of disappear and you never see the book bags again?
No, it's a bit of both. Mostly they're very good. I mean, they pretty much last the year, at least. We do give them new ones every year, because we don't kind of expect that they're going to last longer than that. And it's a long holiday, in between when the year starts again. So they do they pretty much last the year. And actually what happens then at the reading camp as well is that they make like little material sort of, what did you call it? Pieces of material that they paint on with their name and the animal, whether it's a giraffe or the zebra, whatever the animal of the camp is, and then they stick those onto their book bags, and then they can keep those.
Amazing. So, got another question here, or I suppose more of a statement. It would be amazing to get funding for them once they finish school, and get an in-tech course or something small sponsored, like a nice small kickstart for life. Is there, you follow through with them after that sort of ages of 8 and 9 and everything into the teenage years to try and see what the crossover would then be?
No, we do. We do try and keep track of them, and we are supporting, a couple of them that are now, at other schools, either in sort of higher primary school or high school. So yes, we do try and do that. And we do try and identify, especially those that have shown a special interest or shown, strong inclinations, towards kind of developing academically and field, and we are trying to follow through to support them, all the way through, because it's a confined community, so it's relatively easy, to do that.
So what's the next step then? What's sort of expansion side of things? Have you got any long-term plans of growth around this?
Yeah, I mean, a couple of things. We want to implement something called Budding Q, which is specifically for the grade R, the preschool year, which is kind of pre-literacy skills, sort of some gross and fine motor skills, which are all needed, for literacy development. So I'd like to train up the volunteers so that they can, when they come, they can also spend a little bit of time with the younger kids on their pre-literacy skills. The ISIPO Care Centre that we're involved with in Patterson, we are expanding to there and have issued them with some of the WordWorks materials, which are the games and things, and there's someone there that's going to use them in their aftercare centre. So also to kind of increasingly support that. And obviously, more book donations and that kind of thing. And then this follow through that we were just talking about a few moments ago is something that we'd like to do more of.
Amazing. Cathy, is there anything else you want to share? Anything else you want to tell us about?
Let me just have a look at my notes.
Got some comments coming through saying amazing work and it sounds great. So lots of positive feedback coming your way.
Yeah, and I think, to also focus more on the writing side, because as I say, that's kind of the last sort of barrier, as it were. It's probably the thing that children find the most difficult. And a lot of the time it's simply about being scared about getting it wrong. Scared of having a go and making mistakes because, they want to get it just right. Or it's about, having always copying off the board and not, being stimulated to write their own ideas. So I'd like to do more around stimulating their creativity around writing as well.
And so other than volunteers coming out and getting involved, what are some other ways that people can support Amakhala Foundation in general, but obviously more specifically the Literacy Project? Is it a matter of donating books? Does that help?
Yes, donating books would definitely help. Obviously, always books in good condition and kind of relative, ones that are relevant, especially for younger children. That would be great, because I just think the more books we can get into homes, the better. There's a research that's been done that sort of says 20 books in a home is the tipping point for, a literate child or a literate family, and that might not sound like a lot, but if you're working from a base of 0, then you want to get sort of 20 books into 45 homes. That's quite a lot of books. So that would be great. And obviously, specific funding for the book bags or the reading camp or, all of that, or for little bursaries, for children, that are going further or want to do some further studies. That would also be great.
Presumably, the children can then go back with the books, and you'll probably find in a lot of situations, if their parents might have sort of low education levels, they're helping their parents learn and read a bit more as well, I guess. Yes,
absolutely, yeah.
So I've got another question come through here. It says, what's happening during lockdown, and how are you sort of keeping the kids reading?
Thank you. Thank you for asking. We are getting education sort of packages to the children. Tammy is very much involved with that. I provided sort of a lot of the activities which we download, from the internet and print out for the children. So we're sending those, and we're downloading and printing the Nalibali stories from their website as well, which are lovely sort of 1 to 1.5 page stories available in all the South African languages. So we're sending stories home to read. We're sending home writing, books and paper for them to draw on. And then the teachers have also now been doing some schoolwork, like worksheets that they've been sending home to the kids. So we kind of try and make it a combination of maybe some schoolwork and then some fun work with stories and drawing and words in and that kind of thing.
And presumably now, just one more question from me. If lockdown is going to continue now, which it's sort of semi looking like it is, and tourism is going to be slow now for the next few months, have you started to think about what your strategy can be over the next few months as you can do less and less now, but I suppose gradually that can increase? Have you started to think like what if over the next few months you're not going to get that much volunteer support, or you can't get to see the students as much? Is it just a matter of continuing what you've just described now?
Yeah, pretty much. We've got an educational sort of rep in each village now. Someone who kind of either is on the school governing body already or kind of stands out, as a parent. And we're trying to work through them so that when we send activities and stories to reading, they then take them around to the other families and kind of explain, to the parents or the older siblings, what needs to be done. And that's kind of about the best, we can do at the moment with facilitating. But as I say, they are getting a mixture of schoolwork and fun things to do and stories to read. We've just issued a sort of a reading challenge where they've been issued 10 stories, and they've got a little reading journal log where they've got to log the story that they've read and show that they've read it by drawing a picture of their favorite part, and the adult and signs off on it, and they're going to get a little reward, at the end of that. So we're trying sort of novel ways of doing that. For those who are on WhatsApp, we will also be sharing stuff that's coming through from the organizations like WordWorks and Nalibali, on WhatsApp. We also share those. So we're trying to support in whatever ways we can.
It really does sound fantastic. And so some of the comments that are coming through just of how important education is, not just education on its own, but education as a link to conservation. I think it's becoming more and more clear now that you can't have community projects and education projects on one side and conservation on the other. They've got to have that crossover, haven't they?
Absolutely.
And another one here says fantastic projects. Children are so lucky. Good job, Cathy.
I think sometimes I'm the lucky one to be able to do this.
Fantastic. And then Tanya says, found this so interesting. Thank you so much. This has been brilliant, Cathy. Thank you so much. Is there anything you want to sign off with, or are you happy with everything you've covered there?
I think so. No, I'm happy. Thank you. But I also just want to thank those who have been listening and watching and commenting, and it's heartwarming to know that people are interested and supportive. So, and thank you very much to you, Roger.
No, pleasure. So we'll definitely continue this chat and probably check in with you in particular again in a few months' time to see, what's changed, what sort of initiatives are going on, and I'd love to sort of see what the sort of update is. I know next up we've got a chat about more specifically the health projects coming up sort of next week with Jennifer. So talking about a CPO and stuff like that, which is great. And I think after this, we're starting to get a really rounded picture on all the different elements that Amakhala are doing. And it's the blessing in disguise of this it's been a great chance to catch up and sort of refresh of knowledge, actually, which has been great. Thank you.
Wonderful. No, thanks for what you've done, Roger. It's been great chatting to you.
Thanks so much, Cathy. We'll speak to you again soon.
Sure. Good night.
Thanks. So that comes to an end of another live stream. Just a reminder that the Expedition Project is all about connecting with projects and small businesses around South Africa. And in doing that, we're starting to hear the success stories as well as the challenges that are out there. With this information, we then share the stories with the world and aim to connect these projects with the resources and the volunteers that they ideally need. But not just that, also connecting projects and individuals with each other as well, which is so important. But all of this is only possible with an audience like yourself. So please do support us and projects like Amakhala when you can by sharing these stories and spreading the word. Next up, on Monday, we'll have part 5 of our Amakhala live streams. We'll be talking about the Foundation's health projects. So have a fantastic rest of your week, and we will speak to you soon.
We went door to door in the community, asked people what they thought of the center, thought of where it should go in the future. And so we came up with a new vision. We want to be the leader in this community against the fight against HIV and AIDS and the negative socioeconomic effects of the disease. We do it through uniting, involving, and engaging the community through mobilization, organization, and empowerment.